problems with the post-Brexit trading arrangements, and he said Labour would provide political cover and support to get it through Parliament. Sir Keir also promised his party will remain a good faith guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement.
So I say to the Prime Minister, if there is a deal to do in coming weeks, do it. Whatever political cover you need, whatever mechanisms in Westminster you require, if it delivers for our national interest and the people of Northern Ireland, we will support you. The time for action on the protocol is now.
Donald Trump's company has been fined £1.3 million for a number of tax crimes, including conspiracy, criminal fraud and falsifying business records. The former US president did not go on trial himself, and he denied any knowledge his former executives illegally evaded paying tax over a 15-year period. However, the Trump Organization was convicted for 17 counts of tax fraud last month. Trump's described the case as a politically motivated witch hunt. His lawyers have vowed to appeal the verdict. Rescue teams are searching for survivors after a series of tornadoes swept through the southern United States, killing at least 9 people. 7 of those deaths have been reported in Alabama, which was hit particularly hard by at least 5 twisters, leaving tens of thousands of people without power. Separately, a 5-year-old child amongst the dead after being hit by a falling tree in Georgia. Emergency officials say the death toll, though, is expected to rise. And people across England are being warned to brace themselves for more extreme cold weather, with heavy rain and snow forecast for the coming days. From Sunday, the North, Midlands and central and eastern parts of England are expected to be hit with cold, icy conditions and heavy snow, with the Met Office warning of health risks to vulnerable people. And the Environment Agency has issued 81 flood warnings, mostly in the west and the southwest of England, along with 155 flood alerts. So look after yourselves over the coming days if indeed the bad weather hits you. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now back to Mark Dolan tonight to lighten the mood.
Thanks, Aaron. You're looking sharp tonight. We'll see you at 9. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. If you want to start your weekend right, you have come to the right place. We've got 3 hours of fantastic content for you. And let's kick off, as always, with clips of the week. Yes, I've got the biggest names at GB News knocking on my door every week, begging to be in this section as we bring you the very best from your People's Channel over the last 7 days. Also this hour, former member of the European Parliament and Football Club chairman Rupert Lowe will be here, and we'll ask him if the political elites are trying to undo Brexit. We'll also be joined live in the studio by Ken Wharf, of course, Diana's former bodyguard. He's in the studio to reflect on 2 weeks of Harry-inspired mayhem. Plus, the world champion boxer Ebony Bridges will be on the show later to tell us why sex and sport actually mix. And later in the show, in the big question after 9, following the release of a BBC Shamima Begum podcast, I'll be asking, should we forgive terrorists? Shamima Begum's lawyer joins us live. Sparks will fly. And my Mark Meets guest is the hilarious Margaret Thatcher impersonator and spitting image star Steve Nallen. So it is Friday night and it's cold outside, so why not settle down and have a great night in with myself and some fantastic guests. What better way to start than with my GB News clips of the week. We kick off our clips of the week with the magnificent Nana Akua. Now, I know Nana is never afraid to ask the tough questions, but even I raised an eyebrow at last week's Tweet Nana topic. Read the question carefully in the bottom right-hand corner.
Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. I've also got a poll up right now asking that very question. Would you forgive Harry if he was your son? Cast your vote now, but first, a short break.
Now, the eagle-eyed will actually understand that read, would I forgive Harry if he was in my son? Well, it depends how well they know each other. I mean, has he taken him out for dinner? Have they had a drink? Was my son ready for that next big step? I'll be honest, there could be a few quid in it, so I'd say go for it, lad. Moving on, the NHS remains a huge crisis. What's the problem? Strikes, winter flu, poor recruitment? Renowned health expert Leo Kearse has other ideas.
We should scrap the NHS because they're racist, and we know that they're racist because they've got equality, diversity and inclusion departments because they've got so much racism. So the fact they've got equality, diversity and inclusion departments means that they're too racist to exist.
Is that a convincing argument? That rant is a bit like the movie Inception, and we're going to have to watch it a few times to work out exactly what's going on there. Now, I had the privilege of sitting in for Dan Wootton last week, but the big man was back on Monday. No spin, no bias, no censorship. Here is Dan's even-handed and impartial take on a certain book which is shooting up the bestseller charts.
Prince Harry's delusional work of fantasy Spare has hit the shelves, and buried between his treacherous bile are first-world problems that expose him as the ultra-privileged man-baby that he really is.
Months later, and I still have no idea where Dan stands on that issue. Now, we can't get enough of Dan Wootton on Clips of the Week. Here he is politely rebuffing Sadiq Khan after the London mayor suggested Brexit was a mistake.
The biggest piece of self-inflicted harm ever done to a country leaving the European Union.
There you go. Well, Dan's response. Let's take a look. There you go.
That's democracy, mate.
Folks, by the way, Clips of the Week has made it into next week's Clips of the Week. Roll VT.
That's democracy, mate. That's democracy, mate.
I can sense that's going to be the meme of 2023. Now, I was on the Channel 4 reality show The Jump once, but despite my superb performance, I was voted off by the viewers. What does Dan Wootton think of that? That's democracy, mate. I tell you something. I ordered takeaway with my family the other day. I wanted Chinese. The rest of them wanted a curry. That was democracy too. Dan Wootton, once again, spot on. Now, Eamon Holmes is back on our screens, a giant of breakfast television. We've missed his wit, his charisma and professionalism, but most of all, the fact that he's a gentleman of the highest order.
A fashionista, I'm looking at your incredible purple boots under the table there. You're going to show them? There we go. Oh, my God, this is the highest I've ever got me like in my life. You got an eyeful there. Ava doesn't know where to look. Goodness me.
Oh, I did.
Oh, yeah.
Blimey, I'm not even sure he sees that much of Ruth. Let me see if I can pull that trick off. Are you ready, folks? Whoa! Bloody hell. Jesus Christ. Oh, that felt good. There you go. I can just feel our ratings go through the roof. By the way, apologies if you got more than you bargained for there, and apologies to any younger viewers. Now let's crack on. We've got more clips of the week, and Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle next. The show that discusses the major issues of the day and also helps our viewers solve their unfiltered dilemmas. Comedian Sajila Kershi decided a spot of tough love was in order.
I've been with my boyfriend for over 7 years, and I'm really ready to take the next step. The problem is I don't think he is. I keep dropping hints, but he doesn't seem to be catching on. What else should I do? Depends what you mean by the next step. Do you mean divorce?
She obviously means marriage, but there is such a thing as the 7-year itch. And you've been together for 7 years. He's not taking the hint. I think he's cheating on you. He's just not that into you, love.
Blimey, that's the last time I'll let my mistress write into Free Speech Nation. Now, the wonderful leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton, was strangely honest about the makeup of his party on my show on Sunday. Take a listen. Maybe he should help you at UKIP.
Well, we are, how should I say?
Oh, come on, Neil. Spit it out.
We are, how should I say?
Come on, Neil. Tell me about the party. Who's in it? I'm on the edge of my seat.
We are, how should I say, a haven for people who've got all sorts of problems.
We got there in the end. What a ringing endorsement for UKIP membership. Now, we heard from newly trained Dr. Leo Kearse on the state of the NHS earlier. And this esteemed medic also had an interesting tape on therapy. Take a listen.
The Princess of Wales, Kate, she told the young people there that talking therapies don't work for some people. I reckon it's a scam. You just got somebody, they're getting paid So they've got an incentive to keep you coming back each week, so they're not going to cure you.
But therapy just goes on for years and nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, well, my wife's a therapist.
And you're better.
It definitely works.
Awkward. Well, if you need help and are looking for a therapist, please do get in touch. Email us at josheswife@gbnews.uk. Let's end on a really positive note. Our fantastic national reporter, Ellie Costello, has been out to take the pulse of the public regarding Harry's new book. The words may be drivel, but at least there was one bit of good news for the Prince.
And what's your first impression of the book? Well, I like the picture, to be honest. I thought the picture's quite nice. It's well done.
She likes the pictures. Well, they do say you can never judge a book by its cover. And those were your clips of the week. Now, this is an invitation to all eagle-eyed viewers. If you watch any foul-ups, any hilarity or any drama on GB News, then drop us a line, mark@gbnews.uk, and head your email clips of the week, and we may well feature something that you've seen go out over the last 7 days. Coming up after the break, London Mayor Sadiq Khan thinks Brexit is damaging the country and that we should consider rejoining the customs union and the single market. Rupert Lowe, who served as a Brexit Party member of the European Parliament, is next.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. London Mayor Sadiq Khan says he can't keep quiet about the damage that Brexit is doing to the country and that we should consider rejoining the customs union and the single market. So, are members of the political elite still trying to undo Brexit? Joining me to discuss this is the former Brexit Party member of the European Parliament and former Southampton Football Club chairman and broadcaster Rupert Lowe. Hello, Rupert.
Evening, Mark. Happy New Year. It's a joy to be on your show on a Friday evening.
Well, it's great to have you back on the programme. Happy New Year to you as well. But an unhappy New Year for those Remoaners who won't let this go.
Well, again, this is an extraordinary sort of continuation of what's been going on really since the British vote in 2016. And I'm with Dan. It's about democracy. And we had the vote. The British people gave their verdict, despite David Cameron spending $9 million trying to tell us that we should vote the other way. We didn't. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to now accept that vote, respect democracy, forget the Anna Soubries and the Theresa Mays and all the people who tried to frustrate it, not least the civil service behind them, who arguably are running the country rather than our elected politicians. So I think Sadiq Khan's on very dangerous ground. He ultimately is failing London in a big way, I think, and London will be paying the price for many of his misguided policies for a long time to come. So I can't believe that we, the British people, are allowing our elected leaders to frustrate the will of the people who are ultimately their political masters.
Well, indeed, and let's be clear that if we had the customs union, that means no free trade deals, no independent trade policy. If we have the single market, that's free movement. That is Remain.
We can't now go back. We've left the European Union. We finally got the vote. We've left. I think it's interesting that actually the establishment have yet to really deliver Brexit for the British people. They continue to frustrate it. We've still got these laws, these 4,000 odd laws that need to be repealed. We still need to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit of the British people. And we haven't yet given Brexit a proper chance. In spite of that, the British economy is doing remarkably well. The numbers today were encouraging, and I think what we should be asking is not how well is our economy doing, is how badly is Europe's economy doing, and how badly is it likely to do in the future. And the answer is Europe is in an extremely precarious position. We've got, still these fault lines from the euro. We have Italy, which is hanging on by its fingernails. It's hugely indebted. And we've got the Bundesbank now back in control of monetary policy. So I think Europe, despite the fact they spend a lot more on PR than us, and the British are always sort of the whipping boy, we're quietly doing very well, and we haven't even unleashed Brexit yet. So I think we made the right decision. I'm very comfortable with that, and I hope that eventually our leaders will see sense and actually do what they were told to do by the British people and respect the vote, deliver Brexit, and ultimately Britain can still play a part in Europe, but we'll play that part as an independent, democratic, sovereign nation.
Well, amen to that. I voted Remain in 2016, but unlike many, I accepted the result the very next day. And I see colossal opportunities that Brexit has brought and will continue to bring. And you're right to raise concerns about the Eurozone, a possible sovereign debt crisis in the offing, and lots of other problems, including a lack of democracy from Brussels. However, does Mayor Khan, Rupert, not have a point to suggest that businesses, especially small businesses, are suffering as a result of Brexit in the short term? We've heard of outlets that no longer export to the EU because of the cost and the paperwork.
Well, again, I think the paperwork's been made overly complicated, Mark, because I don't think either the Europeans or our establishment actually want Brexit. And you do find that our small businesses are being frustrated. They're being frustrated to a far greater extent, though, I think, by the policies being pursued by Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak. They are not respected. They are an incredibly important part of our economy. They're not striking. They are lumbered with regulations. They are required to collect taxes, whether that's pensions, whether it's VAT, whether it's income tax. They basically collect this as a huge amount of cost to running a business in this country. That all needs to be changed. And hopefully, if we get some sensible leadership, that can all be repealed and we can cut loose the entrepreneurial spirit of the British people. But I don't think that's going to happen until we get some sensible people in power. And unfortunately, what we're watching, I think, is the slow decline of Britain. In many ways, that's very upsetting, but in some ways, it's at least indicative of the fact that from the ashes of collapse can come actual change. So, we're seeing the civil service failing to deliver on its contract with the British people. We all pay our taxes. We expect, therefore, them to deliver the services that they tax us for and charge us for and insert themselves into our lives for. But all the businesses I'm operating in are being incredibly frustrated by the civil service not delivering. They're all working from home. They turn up at 9:30. They leave at 4. The work ethic is terrible. And at the end of the day, that's far more damaging to British businesses, arguably, than a few small rules which are frustrating our exports and our imports. So I think there's a hell of a lot that needs to change. My optimism is the fact that I know that the British people survive against all the odds. They're incredibly creative. And a lot of them are very hardworking. What we now need is some proper leadership.
Well, we have to hope that we will see that in the form of Rishi Sunak. Do you think Rishi Sunak can make a success of Brexit, Rupert?
Well, I supported Rishi. I know his wife very well, Mark. I was on the board of company with her. She's an absolutely charming person, and I like her very much. If I'm being honest, I've been slightly disappointed with Rishi. I think Rishi is clever. I think he's very polished. But I think the problem with Rishi is he's young enough to be held in thrall by our civil servants who ultimately are running the country, as I say. Maggie in her day got it right. She said, advisors advise, but ministers decide. The problem is they only decide if the civil service agree with them, because it's almost impossible to carry out something unless you are supported by the infrastructure behind you, which actually enacts the policy that you decide upon. So what I'm saying is that the elected politicians are not able to deliver, firstly, because often they're too inexperienced or they don't have the strength of character to make, if you like, to land the punches they need to in terms of, if you're running a business, you have to get your staff to do what you want. And the second thing is obviously the civil service, I think, completely out of control. There are far too many of them. We've indulged the what I call administrative bureaucracy of the country through QE. But for QE, we wouldn't have been able to afford it. And now, I think we need some strong leadership, and we need to cut back on the number of bureaucrats and foster the number of entrepreneurs so that we actually create wealth and we create jobs and we create all sorts of opportunity for the British people, which ultimately is how countries prosper.
And of course, Rupert, you are an esteemed entrepreneur. You mentioned surprisingly good news on the economy for November. It's a humble figure, but economic growth of 0.1%. What is your prognosis for the British economy this year?
I think we're heading in for some very difficult times, Mark. I think what's happened is that the sort of what I call carryover of bounce back loans, we haven't heard the end of those yet. I don't think the government's going to get many of those back. The Sybil's loans, all of the largesse that we threw at the wrong people a lot of the time during this wretched, unnecessary lockdown. I think that's provided huge quantities of free money, which has kept the economy going. But I think going into next year, our economy is going to find the wind, the sort of prevailing wind blowing against it. As I say, I think the Europeans will suffer to a far greater extent than we will. But in the end, what we've got to see is some form of stability. What we don't know, of course, is what China's going to do, because she'd locked down while we were suffering huge inflation. Her population is 1.5 billion. Ours is substantially less. We around 70 million, if you believe the official figures. It's probably more. But at the end of the day, I think if China unlocks and she starts to unleash economic growth, what's that going to do to commodity prices? What's it going to do to supply chains? We just don't know. So there's a lot of uncertainty still. But I think we are better placed than Europe in terms of being a sovereign democracy to manage our own currency, our own economy. So I'm optimistic for Britain relative to Europe, but I'm not optimistic for the global economy. I think the global economy faces some huge headwinds.
No buyer's regret in relation to Brexit from the great Rupert Lowe. Thank you, Rupert, for joining us. We'll catch up again soon. Of course, entrepreneur, former chairman of Southampton FC, former MEP as well. Fascinating conversation. Coming up after the break, former royal bodyguard Ken Wharf live in the studio for the final word on Prince Harry and that book. See you in 2.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. Well, it's been the biggest story of the year so far, not the cost of living crisis or the war in Ukraine, but the publication of that book. So let's get the final word on this right royal soap opera from a man who knows the family intimately well, Diana's former bodyguard and best-selling author and royal commentator, Ken Wharf. Ken, great to have you on the show.
Evening, Mark. Great to be here.
You've had a bit of a skim read of the book. What are your first impressions?
Well, my first impressions, I mean, look, this was a book that suddenly escaped the publishers and was sort of escaped into Spain. And that
Leakier than a church roof, this book, isn't it?
It was. But what's interesting, here is a book that, 1.5 million copies sold, and the interview and all of it's now gone throughout 77 territories throughout the world. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a biography like it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I've read it, as you said, as best I can. And there's a lot of history there about his military career, a lot about his mother, and a lot about his early life, etc., which is, readable. But of course, what everyone's picked up are the information about his time in Afghanistan. Yeah. The sort of salacious stories about him losing his virginity in a sort of pub car park near his father's house in Gloucestershire and so forth, which, really I think is sort of doesn't do him any service. But I think particularly as bad was, this notching up 25 kills in Afghanistan. Now, a lot of noted, royal sort of military personnel, both serving and retired, have made, serious comments about that. And I think that was a huge
and that would be a headache for you if he was in your care now, if you were his bodyguard today. You'd have a problem with that, wouldn't you?
Well, I would have a problem. And the fact that he's made that statement, and in today's climate, we have people from the Taliban, making that. I mean, social media today is so worldwide, it's so instant, that does pose a threat, in my view. And, other security advisors have said exactly the same this week. And it's not just for him, it's for other members of the royal family and possibly other serving, and sort of retired officers from the military as well. Because it was quite a serious thing to sort of notch up your kills, as an army, in his case, an army officer, which has been condemned by colleagues and other senior military personnel. So I think that was a big mistake. But the point, Mark, here is that to write a book is one thing, but to suddenly not have somebody with some expertise to go through that copy with you and say, look, a great read, maybe, tell us about your life or whatever, but listen, this isn't a good idea. And are you sure you want to say that about your brother? You really want to air this washing publicly? And I think had that happened, maybe we'd have had a different story here.
Yes, a duty of care to Harry himself, his family, and the wider public, due diligence, and essentially just, as you say, fact-checking a few things. You talked about his early years. You were there for many of his early years. Did you recognise what he wrote about as to have been the truth?
I think there was a lot there that was truthful, but I mean, a lot that he didn't include in it. I mean, I think what was interesting, as two children, and two young boys, they had an extraordinary life together. They were blissfully unaware of the unhappiness of their respective parents, of course. But, they were privileged and, they had a good time. Harry was the joker of the pair of them and was, because of that, was very much more popular than his brother. And there was a sort of bit of sibling rivalry there. William was slightly jealous of his popularity. But up until that point, of course, it was a fairly normal background. They enjoyed holidays together with their mother, and I think what's interesting here is that he talks about the fact that his father didn't take too much interest when he was that young. But of course, the prince was, rather shrewd here because, although he found it difficult that his wife Diana at that time had the lion's share of their upbringing, he was quick to realise that actually, his children were happier with her than they were with him. So, I understand that, but I think that up until the point when he married Meghan, and let's not forget at that point, everyone in the entire world thought, what a great beginning now for, a remodelling of the monarchy, to have, this prince and his wife, a divorcee, an American, a woman of mixed race, so forth, whatever. It was what everything expected, what everything wanted to move the monarchy into the 21st century. And then suddenly, almost immediately, it collapsed. Yeah. And now we have this biography, this book that really, I think, just sort of cements the end to this piece of magic. And then, of course, in the wider context, we're now looking at his father's coronation in May, and everyone talks about, will his son, be invited? I knew the Prince, the King, reasonably well when I worked with Diana. He's a very caring man. He's a very thoughtful man. And he found it very difficult, in that relationship with his wife for all the reasons we know. But one thing's for certain, he wanted William and Harry to be part of his new direction of reshaping the monarchy. And he's lost that third of that. But whether Harry
he won't uninvite Harry, will he?
No, of course he won't. Of course he won't.
And he won't strip Harry of his titles either.
No, I don't think so, because Harry is a prince. He was born a prince, and therefore I think that's highly unlikely. His father will be disappointed with what's been said, as with his brother, as with all current members of the British royal family. But as we all know, and all the royal pundits keep saying the same, they never complain and they never explain. And as with all things today, this will fade away, not necessarily into oblivion, but the prince, or the king, as I would say, will find a way of moving forward.
Yes, and I think actually keeping a respectful silence appears to be good for the profile of the king and the Prince and Princess of Wales, whose popularity is now through the roof, at least here in the UK.
Well, it is. I mean, the king has been about in the last week, although despite dodging a few eggs that have been thrown at him, and William and Kate likewise. But, this is just unfortunate. It's a great shame. And how many, royal commentators and how many sort of people have looked at this and said, why on earth did you need to air this so publicly? You cannot air reconciliations, publicly. And there's one thing for certain, his father and his brother, would be willing to speak across the table, wherever that might be, to try and resolve these matters. It's in all of their interest, but it's particularly, in my view, in Harry's interest to do that, and indeed his wife, Meghan.
Has he, in your estimation, because you know Harry well, has he been got at by Meghan Markle? Has he been brainwashed by this young woman?
That's an interesting question, Mark. I'm not so certain I can give you...
Is he under her spell? She's a very beautiful and intelligent young woman. Is he enthralled to her?
Well, I think that, when you look at the wedding there, and the public events that followed, that event in Nottingham, the event in London, where, she, the consummate actress, the consummate performer publicly, you could see the look in Harry's eyes saying, hey, this is, look what I've got, it's amazing. But, where did it all fall apart? And the point is that that was a complete, that he didn't really appreciate and never really expected. Whether he's completely under her control, I mean, so many people say that she is. I can't say that in all honesty. It seems to me that something is not quite right with that relationship.
Does he look himself to you, though, when you watch those interviews? Is that the Harry you knew?
When I see the interviews, I mean, I look at the interviews that I've had on this week, he's quite confident, but then he's had quite a good teacher over the last 3 or 4 years. But, he's here now to tell his story, and there seems to be no deviation from that.
He doesn't strike me as happy, though.
I don't think he is. I mean, Harry, when you look at him up until the point of his marriage, was the Joker, the most popular member of the royal family, even more popular at that time than the late Her Majesty the Queen.
Absolutely.
And then suddenly the popularity, his popularity and her popularity, is plummeted to levels that I don't think anybody imagined would happen.
Do you buy this idea that he was uncomfortable in the role of spare, hence the name of his book, being the spare royal, that he would never become king? Did you have a sense, knowing him, that this was an awkward position to be put into, or do you think he enjoyed the role?
I don't think that he had a problem with that. Why would he have a problem with that?
It's a good gig, isn't it?
Well, it's a great gig, but look, everyone said, well, they knew nothing about it. They knew exactly who they were.
From day one.
When I went there, Harry was 3, William was 5. They knew exactly who they were. Who wouldn't, travelling from one palace to another?
Didn't William used to say, you wait till I'm king, to certain people when he was a very small child?
Well, he may well have done, but of course the classic phrase was, and I remember travelling with both of them, down to Highgrove, their father's house in Gloucestershire one day. They'd already had a big spat before getting into the car. Diana was driving, and the late Olga Powell, the nanny, was refereeing this Barney that still continued in the car on the way down. I think halfway down the M4, Diana said, look, if you carry on, I'm going back. In a sort of parental, stop it. They did stop. Then suddenly, Harry leant across Olga and said to William, it's all right for you, he said, you'll be king one day and I won't, therefore I can do what I want. I remember, Diana saying, where the hell did he get that from?
Yeah.
But the point is, that's exactly now what he's done. But I don't think being the spare was an issue for him, none whatsoever.
So actually, we've seen, allegations in the book of William attacking Harry, striking him, knocking him to the floor. Has it always been a personality clash between these two young men? Do they not get on? Do they love each other?
Well, I can't speak for the clash in, as they call it, in Knock Cottage, where he sort of fractured the dog bowl.
The jungle in the rumble.
Well, but I just don't think that look, they as brothers, you know, were always scrapping. Like, you know, I did with my brothers. I'm sure you did with yourself and so forth. I think that's a bit of a.
So when you witnessed it when they were small, it was par for the course.
Well, exactly par for the course. I think that's fairly normal. I mean, I think that, you know, as adults, you know, clearly there are disagreements. Clearly, William is not happy with things that Harry's doing, and probably Harry's not happy with what William was doing. Now, because of who they are, you know, it becomes public because that's what happens. And, you know, I can't tell you exactly the reason for that argument, no more than I can actually tell you or discuss with you, you know, the allegations of racism within the royal family. I don't know that.
This is a very personal and emotive question, but do you think that there is love there, though, between the brothers, notwithstanding current frictions?
I actually do think there is a love there, because I think Harry, you know, very much wanted to be part of this new monarchy. That was always his desire. Although he was the spare, he always had a role to play. His father identified that. You know, you're there as a reserve, if you like, to the work of his brother.
He would have been the rock star prince, wouldn't he?
Well, he would, and he's entertaining. He was fun.
Yeah.
People liked that in him. You know, he didn't speak like other royals. He was the sort of your cocky rebel, really.
Almost
people liked him.
like Prince Philip to the Queen. This could have been Harry's relationship with the King, the errant, more entertaining brother. A quick word on aspects of the book that focus on what happened in Paris, the death of Diana, and, well, Prince Harry turning detective. Your thoughts?
Well, in his book, he says that he was concerned about, you know, the death of his mother. That was a huge shock to him, for all reasons that we can all understand that. You know, he loved his mother. You know, his mother loved him, of course, and there was a very interesting relationship there, which I witnessed, and it was very lovely to see it. And the death of his mother at an age, he was 13, must have become a terrible shock. And the fact that he then, through duty, had to walk behind her coffin to Westminster Abbey. And so, you know, it crops up a lot in this book, and notably the death in Paris. And he wanted to rerun effectively what really did happen in that Alma tunnel, which is understandable but quite bizarre in some sense. He, you know, believes, you know, adamantly that the press, the media killed her, which of course, you know, they may well have been a contributory factor in a very small way, but there were significant reasons why, you know, his mother died. And she died because of the incompetence of the protection team that wasn't from Scotland Yard, you know, that were policing her at that particular time. But for him to experience that journey in the Alma Tunnel at speeds that he said was the same as when his mother was driving, he could find no real reason why, you know, that car should have you know, collided with the 13th pillar. What he doesn't mention, of course, the actual driver of that car was nearly 3.5 times over the drink drive limit.
Yeah.
And that's all I can say, Mark.
On your watch, Ken, Diana would be with us today. A privilege to have you in the studio. We know you've got lots of opinions on politics, on culture, and the economy, lots of other issues. So I believe you're going to accept an invitation to join us on the panel soon.
That'd be great, Mark.
All the other things that Ken Wharf thinks. Ken, thank you so much for helping us put a full stop on that sorry royal saga. After the break, I'll be joined by a sporting superstar. It's the brilliant world title-winning boxer Ebony Bridges, and she won't be pulling her punches when she tells us why sex and sport go together. Find out more after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there. Let me tell you that this is Mark Dolan tonight, and it's a very busy 3-hour show. From 9 o'clock, all of your favourite elements in the programme. We've got Mark Meets, we've got The Big Opinion, and we've got My Take at 10. In My Take at 10, I'll be dealing with a battle, the war between Warburtons and Waitrose over crumpets. More on that after 10. And in My Big Opinion at 9, the Church of England goes woke. More on that shortly. But first, Australian sports star Ebony Bridges is one of the biggest names in boxing. Nicknamed the Blonde Bomber, she was an outstanding amateur before moving on to conquer the professional ranks. And she is the current IBF bantamweight world champion. Bridges has also raised eyebrows with her provocative outfits at weigh-ins, and alongside her boxing career, she has an extremely popular account on OnlyFans. So Ebony joins me now. Hi, Ebony. Great to have you on the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really well, and congratulations on all of your sporting achievements to date. Many viewers would wonder why you have an OnlyFans account, given the fact that you're so big in boxing.
Well, you know what? The thing is OnlyFans is becoming more and more popular amongst athletes and just influencers in general, you know, because what it is us as a sports person. For me, if I'm talking about myself, I'm a brand. Boxing is my career. My brand is my career. My name is my career. So I'm going to make money off my name, right? I'm going to make money off who I am. So instead of just only making money in boxing, I can go in on OnlyFans. I can have exclusive content for my fans who enjoy wanting to see whatever they can, you know, all the stuff that's not on your social media, you know, because it's a job, right? It's a job. So I show all behind the scenes boxing. I show a lot more training stuff. I show, you know, of course, more than just, you know, you got the weigh-ins. People only get to see me, you know, being a bit more sexy in my weigh-ins, which is like 2-3 times a year. So they get to go on my OnlyFans and see a little bit more skin of me. And I get to talk to all my fans one-on-one. You know, I like sitting on OnlyFans and chatting to my fans. But you got to remember, you know, as a celebrity or an athlete. That's your job, you know, to be a name, to be a brand. So of course you want to go and make money off it. Why wouldn't you?
For those that don't know, Ebony, OnlyFans is essentially a subscription service, and people pay a certain amount every month and they get exclusive access to you. So photographs, updates, videos, bits of information, this and that you won't find anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So everything that's on my OnlyFans, like I'm not a big blogger on Instagram. You know, Instagram for me is just work. You know, it's just my boxing. I promote my boxing. I promote other girls on my social media, and you know, on just things on there like business wise. But with OnlyFans, it's more exclusive. It's more behind the scenes stuff. It's more like what I'm doing at home, or you know, behind the scenes in boxing, or just, you know, before I go out, and like all this kind of stuff. So, and I can chat to my fans, you know, it's somewhere I can chat to them, and, you know, I go on there and I give myself a certain amount of time, you know, in the day where I can sat and get to know my fans, and they can get to know me, because they're paying to, you know, and supporting my career and supporting me as fans. So I give back in that sense as well, you know, and, you know, there's plenty of people doing it. You know, you got even Derek Chisora is doing it, you know, Devin Haney, the men are doing it as well. But of course, when it comes to women doing it, it's kind of frowned upon, but because of obviously the adult industry that's related to it. But the thing is, you know, OnlyFans is trying to mainstream a little bit more, and you'll see a lot more athletes and a lot more sports stars and a lot more celebrities getting on OnlyFans, because it's that exclusive content, you know, and we have a right, as we've worked hard in our careers, to make more money, I think, you know, and that's pretty much what it is. It's job, it's business, you know, and if you're smart, you do it.
Indeed.
Boxing's not around forever. Boxing's not around forever.
Well,
you know, I only get paid per fights.
You've run your career on your own terms. Do you regret there's not more money in boxing so that you don't have to do OnlyFans?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially for us women, there's not much in boxing, not much money in it. You know what I mean? With how much we sacrifice and how much we put in, it's nowhere near the levels of men. Like my brand and my name of where it's at, I'm getting nowhere near a man that's of equal. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's not like I regret doing it. I enjoy doing OnlyFans. I enjoy talking to my fans. I enjoy having exclusive content and filming and all that kind of stuff. It's just another thing for me, you know. Like it's why, just because I'm a boxer, do I just have to train in the gym and box?
Yeah.
Why can't Why can't I do everything else? Like, why do I just have to do that and that's it? I just got to box and whatever. Especially now, I've got a broken hand. What am I going to do? I can't even train. Do you know what I mean?
What happened?
What do I do?
What happened to your hand, Ebony?
I busted my hand in a fight, but my last fight obviously made it a lot worse. You should see the other girl, her face. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, you know, you think my hand's bad, you should see the face I broke it on, right?
You're right.
So, she's... Yeah, so it's just that, look, it's an ongoing injury that I've had, but it got really bad in my last fight, so I've decided that I've had to bite the bullet and get the surgery. They've taken bone out of my hip to fuse my joints in my hand, so I'll be out for quite a while. I won't be fighting till after summer, so that's, again, no money, no fights, you know, so what am I going to do, sit back and twiddle my thumbs, go get a normal job in a bar, like, you know what I mean? So it's just, you know, it's like I gotta use what I got, and I just think it's a great platform. It's not just a great platform for athletes and celebrities to be able to, you know, obviously work in their career and build their career. It's great for the fans, you know, because like it gives us also more incentive as well to get to know the fans and get to show a little bit more as well. You got to understand, people like get upset, you know, like you're making your fans pay to talk to you and see. I'm like, well, that's our job, man.
Yeah.
Like it's our job. Like, this is our job, being a sportsman, being a celebrity. Like, that's our job. So yeah, we're going to get paid like you would to go to work. It's a work.
Absolutely right. Well, I'm sure we've boosted your OnlyFans numbers tonight. Do you think I should do OnlyFans, Ebony?
You could definitely do OnlyFans. There's people for everything.
I'll take that the right way. Listen, we wish you a speedy recovery and can't wait to see you back in the ring. One of my absolute sporting heroes, Ebony. A thrill to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Have a good evening.
The fabulous Ebony Bridges, who thinks I should do OnlyFans. Would you subscribe? 50p a year? Would that be worth it? I'll take my tie off and everything. In a few minutes' time, in my Big Opinion monologue, the Church of England used £100 million to apologise for slavery. Yes, woke Welby has lost the plot. And my Mark Meets guest is the brilliant comedian Steve Nallen, the actor and impressionist who, of course, was Margaret Thatcher in the 80s. A brilliant show coming. My Big Opinions next. Don't go anywhere.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in my Big Opinion, the Church of England used £100 million to apologise for slavery. Woke Welby has lost the plot. My Mark Meets guest is the hilarious Margaret Thatcher impersonator and spitting image star Steve Nallen. In The Big Question, after the BBC released a 10-part Shamima Begum podcast, I'll be asking, should we forgive terrorists? Shamima Begum's lawyer joins us live on the show. Plus, in the news agenda, are the Brit Awards guilty of misogyny for ditching the female category? Also, is it time to stub out smoking for good? And are parents responsible for the behaviour of their grown-up children? I'll see you after the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy has been found not guilty on 6 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault against 5 women. However, the France international faces a retrial on 1 count of rape and 1 count of attempted rape after the jury failed to reach verdicts after a 5-month trial at Chester Crown Court. His retrial for those 2 counts has been scheduled for June. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is urging the Prime Minister to resolve the Northern Ireland Protocol dispute as a matter of urgency. Sir Keir says if Rishi Sunak makes a deal to solve problems with the post-Brexit trading arrangements, Labour will provide the political support to get it through Parliament.
So I say to the Prime Minister, if there is a deal to do in coming weeks, do it. Whatever political cover you need, whatever mechanisms in Westminster you require, if it delivers for our national interest and the people of Northern Ireland, we will support you. The time for action on the protocol is now.
The threat of strike action in Scotland's NHS has been put on hold while negotiations take place on a new pay offer for this year. The unions say fresh talks with the Scottish Government are expected to start next week, with any deal reached backdated to this month, January. The Royal College of Nursing and the GMB union rejected a pay offer in November, which is worth, on average, around 7.5%. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, says every possible step will be taken to help the NHS. Donald Trump's company's been fined £1.3 million for a number of tax crimes, including conspiracy, criminal fraud and falsifying business records. The former US president didn't go on trial himself and denied any knowledge his former executives illegally evaded paying tax over a 15-year period. However, the Trump Organization was convicted for 17 counts of tax fraud last month. Rescue teams are searching for survivors after a series of tornadoes swept through the south of the US, killing at least 9 people. 7 of those deaths have been reported in Alabama, which was hit by at least 5 twisters, leaving tens of thousands of people without power. Emergency officials, though, expect the death toll to rise. People across England are being warned to brace themselves for more extreme cold weather over the coming days. The Environment Agency has issued 81 flood warnings, mostly in the west and the southwest of England. And from Sunday, the north, the Midlands and central and eastern parts of the country are expected to be hit by cold, icy conditions and possibly heavy snow. At TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it is back to Mark Dolan tonight.
My thanks to Aaron, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion monologue in just a moment, the Church of England used £100 million to apologise for slavery. Woke Welby has lost the plot. In the big question, after the BBC release a 10-part Shamima Begum podcast, I'll be asking, should we forgive terrorists? Shamima Begum's lawyer is on the show live. My Mark Meets guest is the hilarious Margaret Thatcher impersonator and spitting image star Steve Nallen. And in my take at 10, why have Waitrose stopped stocking Warburton's delicious crumpets? I'll be picking a side in the bread wars. Plus, in the news agenda, are the Brit Awards guilty of misogyny for ditching the female category? Is it time to stub out smoking for good? And are parents responsible for the behaviour of their grown-up children? Reacting to these stories and many more are my fantastic panel tonight of journalist and the star of GB News Breakfast, Stephanie Tecci, former advisor to Boris Johnson, political commentator Kulvia Ranger, and academic and best-selling author Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. I want to hear from you throughout the show, mark@gbnews.uk. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. So for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. But before we start, let me tell you that for a very strange reason, over the last couple of weeks, I've spent a lot of time in hospitals. Family members, knocks and scrapes and bruises, and a couple of broken bones as well. And as I've always said, notwithstanding the bureaucratic challenges of the NHS, the staff are incredible. So a very big shout out to the Whittington Hospital and the Charing Cross Hospital, who have been amazing to my family. And a special shout out to June, Ray and Anne in Clinic 1D. Was it 1B? Oh, God, I'm glad I'm not a doctor. I think it's Clinic 1B. Thanks for a great job. They've patched us all back up and we're ready to go. Let's get cracking. Good God, the allegedly cash-strapped Church of England have found 100 million quid down the back of the sofa to apologise for slavery. The sum was announced by Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, after a commission investigating church investments concluded that some of their wealth was accumulated after initial investments with the South Sea Company. At the time, it traded in slaves. The fund is to pay for a programme of investment, research and engagement and to help communities affected by historic slavery. Now, slavery is, in my view, up there with genocide as the most egregious human crime in history. But is it the Church of England's job to expend their energy and precious donations to atone for it, particularly when the scale of the C of E's links to slavery is challenged this week by top historian Robert Toombs, co-editor of History Reclaimed, who this week wrote in The Telegraph, "In their evident desire to make a splash, those responsible have both exaggerated the Church's involvement with slavery and, rather more reprehensibly, exaggerated their own response today." How unchristian. The history of all empires is stained by the blood and tears of human suffering. But what we're seeing here in this policy is the kind of hand-wringing piety that has infected so many of our great institutions like academia, museums, the arts, and now the Church of England. Self-flagellating, hair-shirt-wearing Britain bashing has become a national pastime, particularly enjoyed by the powerful elite. It's all part of a narrative that says the UK is a dreadful country with a shameful history. Now, slavery was shameful, but Britain led the world in tackling it and bringing it to an end. I went to a big museum recently to look at an early steam engine prototype. I know how to live. But a sign next to it linked this miraculous device to our colonial past. It's a bloody steam engine. Can't we just enjoy its majesty and marvel at a great British innovation? Now, of course, we must learn about slavery at school and beyond, absolutely, and never repeat that evil crime again. But this fund, set up by Welby as church roofs creak, homelessness spirals and parishioners struggle with the cost of living, is also a nod to the idea of reparations, although the Church are keen to stress it is no such thing. Interest from this fund will go to impacted communities overseas. Well, whether it's reparations or not, sounds like semantics to me. Why should parishioners already on their knees pay for the crimes of the past? Where do you start with that can of worms? Should we hit the Swedes up for a few billion quid based upon the behaviour of the Vikings? Should young Germans who have only read about the Second World War pay reparations for that? And if you're going to address slavery, why not deal with the slavery that's happening right now, as demonstrated in this brilliant new book, Cobalt Red, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives, by Siddharth Kara. This book reveals that thousands of children and teenagers right now, today, are working 12-hour shifts, knee-deep in mud, mining for lithium and other precious elements. All to support the green agenda of which the ever right-on Justin Welby is such a fan. This increasingly politicised faith leader has made pronouncements on the Rwanda plan to relocate asylum seekers as their applications are processed. He's pronounced on net zero and every other contentious bandwagon. Now, the Church of England would argue they are serving God's will in the fight against evil, of which slavery is a perfect example. If the Church has amassed a fortune off the back of human suffering, it's understandable they wish to recognise that. And I guess Welby thinks it's unchristian to destroy the planet or curtail human rights in relation to the government's border policy. I understand all of that. But in relation to the 100 million quid on non-reparations reparations, where is this money coming from? As vicars are being laid off, as parishes merge to save cash, and as church buildings fall into disrepair. As the Telegraph's excellent cartoonist Blower pointed out this week, the church roof appeal has been replaced by the historic Apology Fund. Why wasn't the Archbishop more vocal in his criticism of, in my view, the deeply unchristian COVID measures? As healthy people were locked in their homes, as funerals became a socially distanced farce, and as churches closed their doors to parishioners at a time when they needed their faith more than ever. Now, of course, the church didn't make the rules. I'll grant you that. Lockdowns were a matter of law. But given the societal, human and economic damage from what, in my opinion, was a failed experiment to stop a virus, why was Welby on that occasion so deafeningly silent? If I'd been a cleric, I'd have been campaigning to keep churches as well as schools open the whole time. I'm not a cleric, of course. I'm far too sinful. They wouldn't have me anyway. In my view, Welby's 100 million quid fund to say sorry for the past has the strong whiff of woke about it, a divisive ideology that threatens the future of this great institution. Welcome to the modern, new-look, plant-based Church of England 2.0. May God forgive them. Now, a spokesperson for the Church Commissioners of England has said, we recognise that this investment comes at a time when there are significant financial challenges for many people and churches, and when the Church has commitments to address other wrongs from our past. We will continue to support these groups and remain committed to existing funding obligations. In 2022, we announced a 30% increase in our funding of the Church of England, which will amount to £1.2 billion in the next 3 years. So what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Have the church gone woke? Should the church effectively divert funds to communities impacted by historic slavery? Let me know, mark@gbnews.uk. I'll get to your emails shortly. But reacting to that and all the big stories of the day, my panel, journalist Stephanie Tecci, former advisor to Boris Johnson, political commentator Coolvia Ranger, and best-selling author and academic Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. Stephanie, let me start with you. What's your view of this? Arguably, atoning for crimes of the past sounds like a very Christian thing to do.
No, I don't really agree with it, Mark, because one of the Christian fundamental teachings is that we do not keep no records of wrongs, and that includes slavery as well. And while slavery is a very sensitive subject to me as a black person, I think there's other ways that these communities could be, offered some sort of compassion or forgiveness. And this is not the time when we're going through a current cost of living crisis where you want to be donating £100 million to a cause like this. That money could be going towards to some of their members and helping them pay their energy bills, any kind of real problems they're going through. And I just don't think this is it. I think this is a bit distasteful of the church, actually, and I think it's a little bit too late. Black people for a very long time have asked for apology, but it's not in terms of financial gain. It's more in terms of accepting it. And I don't think it has to be something that you have to throw your checkbook at.
Well, I suppose the issue, Stephanie, is that the moral case for reparations is a strong one, but it's just a practical headache. How the hell do you do it? Where would you start?
It is a very hard one, but I just don't think now is the time to be throwing the money at it, to be honest. It's a very ongoing, long situation in trying to make repairs for slavery. And for different communities, different black people, it's going to be in different ways. I think some black people just want people to be educated on racism. But in terms of throwing money at it at times, it leaves this very sour taste in my mouth, Mark.
Coolvia Ranger, I suppose the Archbishop feels burdened by the wealth of the church and the nature of how they got there, how they amassed those billions, and that's why he wants to do something about it.
Well, there seems to me a certain amount of guilt, and, that might be so for the Archbishop and for the church. But really, what do people look for from religious institutions and the Church of England? I think they look for spiritual guidance, they look for comfort, as you were saying, Mark, at times of great need. They don't generally look for money. And I think that's the conflation here. As you said, it's very hard to start to saying, well, how much is a mistake worth? I do believe hidden history should be acknowledged. Mistakes of the past should be recognised. But I think the institution needs to then play its role. And its role is of spiritual guidance, of comfort, and fundamentally also dealing with its own house. If the roof needs to be fixed, if the church needs to have its infrastructure, if it needs to deal with its worshippers and support them. Do it now and do it well. I think acknowledge your mistakes, but as Stephanie said, this is not a checkbook spirituality. This is about actually helping people.
Kulveer, briefly, if you can, you were former advisor to Boris Johnson. You know how politicians tick. Do you think the Archbishop is getting too political these days?
Well, I think both you and I have sort of mentioned him per se. It seems to be his own sort of leadership style as much as anything else. I think he has stepped into the political realm. I think, you know, a certain infamous spin doctor said before, you know, about prime ministers don't do religion. Well, religion shouldn't do politics. It's there, as we say, to give guidance in a spiritual form to individuals when they need it, when they want it, when they're looking for that. They don't want political opinions and current in vogue fads to be the things they're hearing from the pulpit or the actions that they're probably religious institutions are taking.
Lisa Mackenzie, a colossal amount of inequality and poverty in our own country, which you've been very, very importantly highlighting since you began your appearances on GB News, and long before that, you'd like to see major changes in our society. But what's your view about this move from the C of E?
Well, I'm an anarchist and an atheist. So, you know, I suppose my take on this is going to be completely different. The Church of England is an extremely wealthy institution. If it's got some guilt towards things that it's invested in the past, then let it bloodlet that guilt out, if that's what it wants to do. Regarding the church and sort of fixing its roof, and, you know, the British society is not a C of E country anymore. So, you know, perhaps, you know, this money that it's going to sort of spread around, perhaps it may do some good. I think it might be something good. Stephanie said, you know, about education. Some of this money could perhaps go to different communities and help with education programmes on history, you know, on hidden history, on colonial history, and also on history around class. Because one of the things that we have to remember with these sort of reparations is the British working class did not benefit from those atrocities of our colonial past. You know, we were also, the British working class was also part of an oppressed group as well. So I think, you know, perhaps the Church of England's money could do some good in some of our communities. And regarding homelessness and the cost of living crisis, should we really be putting that at the door of any religious institution? You know, that's about our society, and it's about finance, and it's about politicians. So I don't, as an anarchist and as an atheist, I don't want religious institutions or even charities to think that they are responsible for society's ills, which mostly are caused by politicians and finance systems.
Indeed so. Well, look, my brilliant panel returns shortly. In the news agenda, are the Brit Awards guilty of misogyny for ditching the female category? Also, is it time to stub out smoking for good? And are parents responsible for the behaviour of their grown-up children? I do hope my mother's not watching. My Mark Meets guest is the incredible comedy impressionist, the legendary Steve Nallen, who, of course, was famous for his Margaret Thatcher in the 80s. But next up in The Big Question, should we forgive terrorists? See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Has the Church of England gone woke? Big response to my big opinion monologue. Hi, Mark, says Jacqueline. It's not a surprise to me that the Church of England could find £100 billion to spend on such a load of cobblers, as I recently learned that the Church has an endowment which originated from Queen Anne that's reportedly worth around £6 billion. So the next time they rattle a collection tin for a leaky roof, they can spend their own sodding money. Derek, hi Mark. Stephanie, your panellist, is absolutely right. Archbishop Welby appears to confuse Christianity with socialism. I do not agree with his action, and I am an active member of the Church of England. Keep those emails coming, Mark, at gbnews.uk. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. This week, the BBC have produced a podcast series about Shamima Begum, a British citizen who travelled to the Middle East to join ISIS. She has since expressed regret at this decision, and although she has not been linked with any terror attacks, many find it unconscionable that the Beeb should be doing a profile of this young woman. However, she was young and impressionable and would argue she is no longer a danger to society. So tonight's big question, should we forgive terrorists and those who get involved with them? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Shamima Begum's lawyer, criminal defence solicitor Tasneem Akunji, and Charlotte Littlewood, who is a Henry Jackson Fellow and former counter-extremism coordinator. First of all, Tasneem, thank you very much for joining us in the studio. What's your view about the big question? Should we forgive terrorists or those that get involved with them?
Well, first of all, just to clarify, I'm Shamima Begum's family's lawyer, just to be clear. But in terms of forgiveness, we have a criminal justice system which levies accusations against people who are accused and then brings evidence to bear so that those people can be judged by a jury of their peers. Generally, those people, if they are found guilty, are then convicted and they serve a sentence, after which they're rehabilitated into society. That's generally the process that we as a civilized society use to punish those who've committed crimes. That entire system is being actively disengaged from Shamima Begum. So the idea is, as a society, do we forgive people? We generally do, depends on how heinous their crimes are, but we do it through a formal process under the rule of law. And our complaint here is that that's simply not being applied in this case.
Thank you for the correction that you are the family's lawyer. Do you think that the media have demonised this young woman?
Well, I think that anyone who's joined a terrorist organisation has a certain amount of negativity coming their way. The question is the scope of that. Now, in terms of what's been the reporting on this overall, I think it's evolved. I think when she left at 15, the British public and the reporting around this was generally quite sympathetic. How do you bring a young schoolgirl back? But since we've had a different approach in government, particularly after Sajid Javid's decision, the reporting on this has changed a lot, and it may well be linked to unfortunate events, horrific events in the UK, like the Ariana Grande bombing, which was attributed to Islamic extremists, and individuals there were convicted of that. Now, a horror like that happening on UK soil will certainly change attitudes of the public, and it would no doubt change the approach that the press would take. But we don't believe in trial by media. We believe in trial by jury. And again, that's where we return back to.
We've just been talking, Charlotte Littlewood, about the Church of England and about Christianity. It's obviously a Christian principle to forgive. Is it time to do just that with terrorists and those that get involved with them?
To be honest, Mark, I think it's absolutely perverse that we are even thinking about whether or not we have any right in the forgiveness of Shamima Begum and anyone who showed any sympathy or support for ISIS. Those that have the right to answer the question as to whether or not she can be forgiven are absolutely tragically, in large numbers, no longer with us or displaced in hundreds of thousands. 3,000 Yazidis are still missing. Unspeakable human atrocity, cruelty, burning people alive, beheadings with kitchen knives. As we well know, Shamima Begum was aware as well of this kind of brutality before she left. Interestingly, the BBC's first episode really does give us that insight that she was aware of beheadings and she knew what she was going to join before she left. So forgiveness, I think we cannot be so arrogant to assume we have any right to even begin to talk about forgiveness here. That is for the victims and the victims alone. And whether or not she should be seen in the light of victimhood and grooming and given this platform is something that I think is wholly irresponsible of the BBC and playing into a victim narrative, which is a part of the problem, a part of the grievance, that the very nature of what can lead people to become radicalised.
Tasneem, this young woman knew about beheadings. Tasneem, sorry, I think there's an issue with the line. This young woman knew about the beheadings. How could we possibly forgive?
Well, we say young woman, but she was, of course, a child when she went, who was, by all accounts, groomed and trafficked. So, again, the issue of Shamima Begum is somewhat different to many others who've gone there as mature adults and made adult decisions. Now, of course, she was, quote unquote, married under the an ISIS sort of ceremony within 2 weeks of her return, landing in Syria. And she was a 15-year-old girl who was married, quote unquote, to a 23-year-old Dutch national. Now, in anyone's books under the law of Holland or the UK, that would be considered statutory rape. And the reason for that is because under our laws, a 15-year-old cannot give consent to a sexual intercourse with an adult. Now, under that principle, the arguments being deployed against her are that she had somehow the culpability, despite being groomed, to have made a decision to go to Syria, but yet didn't have the wherewithal under the law to give consent to having sex with a 23-year-old. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, well, she's not responsible and therefore Mr. Yago Radic is a paedophile by definition, while simultaneously saying, but on another footing, she had absolutely the thinking required to make decisions to join a terrorist organization. And it's interesting that one says that, you know, the victims of ISIS, and absolutely true, the victims of ISIS are the ones that can forgive ISIS. The question is, what did Shamima Begum do? What are her crimes? And certainly nothing has been attributed in terms of any sort of violence or anything to her. So,
Charlotte, what are this?
If the argument is that by joining an organisation you are responsible for the crimes of that organisation, well, then we'll have to ask the Kenyans whether they'll forgive Britain for beheading their people, British soldiers beheading Kenyans in the Mau Mau rebellion in the 60s. So, the same applies on both sides.
Charlotte Littlewood, let's go back to this BBC podcast. I must say, when it was announced, I thought it was an unedifying spectacle. And I do feel that there are parts of the media that have rather romanticised the image of Shamima Begum, glossing over, as you say, some of the awful material that she was, willingly exposed to, or at least, obviously, Tasneem mentioned that she was groomed and trafficked, but she was aware of these most egregious crimes that were being played out. However, don't we all want to understand where it came from, learn about her story, so other cases can be prevented?
I think the question is more, don't we want to learn and understand from the victims and learn and understand and hear from those families that have lost people and those that are still displaced? I mean, what I find very interesting were the comments about her being a child, but we saw an interview, and no one will forget, from her 19 years old, saying that she was not regretting any of her decisions to join the Islamic State, that she is glad she joined because she met her husband. And if she had not joined, she would not have met her husband, and she would not have met a man like him, an ISIS fighter, a man like him anywhere else. Shamima Begum showed no remorse and continues to show no remorse for the ideology that she signed up for. She seemed to show regrets that the caliphate had fallen and that she was then in an uncomfortable position, didn't have access apparently to mint chocolate. But she very much said that she'd seen beheadings, she knew about the beheadings, she still came. She'd seen heads in bins and was unfazed. Manchester bombing, she said, was legitimate because it was a response to the attacks on Syria. Her opinions at 19 as an adult were abhorrent and clearly a threat to national security at the time. That's why she had a citizenship revoked. So I find it strange that we still talk about her considerations here at 15. We knew her considerations at 19.
Tasneem Akunji, no remorse.
Well, it's interesting because Charlotte is saying that, well, it's abhorrent that she's being platformed, but is quite happy to take snippets of parts of her story from the media and stitch them together to form her narrative. So I don't see why we should take snippets and not hear a much more fulsome account by her herself. But the snippets she has taken were taken from an interview given by Shamima Begum while she was in Al-Hol refugee camp, surrounded by ardent ISIS supporters. Now, had she said anything, even the little things that she said at the time that were slightly against ISIS, in that situation led to her life being put at risk, and the SDF then had to move her from that camp and move her to Al-Roj camp, where she is now. So she was effectively under duress, under threat of death. Other women and children had been set alight in that camp, on their tent set alight, for saying anything against their previous sort of situation in ISIS. And since then, in her Al-Roj situation, where she's much safer, there are only 2,500 refugees there, and the SDF have much more control over that situation. Her interviews are very different in complexion to that which she said when she was at Al-Hol.
Okay.
So I think the BBC documentary will allow for her to tell her own story and investigate elements of that may be truthful or otherwise. And I think that's what's important about this, that she gets to tell her story rather than others telling it for her.
Okay, Charlotte, I've only got a few seconds left. Just picking up on what Tasneem has said there, I consider what this girl at the time, young woman now, signed up for was truly reprehensible. You're so right to focus on the victims. But don't we want to understand how it happened so we can prevent the next Shamima Begum?
We do plenty of work to try and understand why people join terrorist organisations. We don't need a 10-part podcast to understand that. There are studies, there are books, there are experts, there are those that are working with those who are radicalised in prisons to de-radicalise them. There's a whole body of work, science and study. Do we need a 10-part documentary funded by us, the British viewers? Absolutely not.
OK. Brilliant stuff. A fascinating debate. Apologies, the clock is against us, but my thanks to lawyer to the family of Shamima Begum, criminal defence solicitor Tasneem Akunji, and Charlotte Littlewood, who is a Henry Jackson Society fellow and former counter-extremism coordinator. Thanks to both. A fascinating debate. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. My Mark Meets guest after 10 is the incredible comedy impressionist Steve Nallen, who was, of course, famously Margaret Thatcher in the 80s. Absolute genius, comedy legend live in the studio. We've got the papers at 10:30 with full panel reaction. But next, are the Brit Awards guilty of misogyny for ditching the female category? What do you think about that? There is no best female singer at the Brits. Is that sexist? See you shortly.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, the Brit Awards have come under fire as no female artists were nominated for 2023's Artist of the Year. This comes just a year after the Brits decided to remove gendered categories, for example, Best Female Singer, Best Male, after being criticised by non-binary singer Sam Smith. So it begs the question, are the Brit Awards guilty of misogyny for ditching the female category. There's only one person that I should ask about this. It's Corvair Ranger. What do you think? By the way, I have...
I'm an expert on this, my expert
Well, you've got
topic.
a lovely singing voice, haven't you?
I have. You've heard me in the shower, have you? Yeah, let's not go there.
I have my spies.
Yes. I'm with Adele on this. I think last year when she won, and she said she loves being a woman and loves being a female singer. Well, how do you argue with that? But the Brits have obviously found a way of doing it. You're losing the depth. You would have seen this coming. If you bring it all together, there would have been a point, maybe there wouldn't have been any males nominated in a year or any. So you're going to have that come, and what are you going to do about it? And also you're limiting it. If we have, if we have non-binary and other categories, why couldn't there be a category for those individuals if they want to be in that category? But I felt it's something that music is always at the forefront of embracing this kind of change. That's youth that drives that change. Let's see how it pans out for a couple of years. But I've got a feeling that strong female vocalists and male vocalists may emerge in their own right yet again.
Stephanie, not only are you the star of GBNews Breakfast, but you are an extremely experienced entertainment journalist. What do you think of this?
Mark, the word woman has become such a dirty word, and I don't like it at all. You know, women in the music industry, they've worked so hard to be treated fairly and equally in terms of pay, in terms of recognition, and in terms of how they are recognised as female artists. And last year, when they announced that they were getting rid of the gendered awards, the writing was on the wall there. I knew that this was going to happen this year. And it's all because of Sam Smith, because he got his knickers in a twist, and he doesn't know where...
Oh, no, wait, what is it?
White fronts. No.
Gender-neutral jockeys.
Yes, he's now been nominated for 2 awards this year, thanks to his wokery, but that's been at the expense of women who've recorded so much great music this year, including Charlie XCX, Florence Welch, and they're not going to be recognised. And I think the Brits have made a fundamental big mistake in their bid to try get equality. They've actually snubbed 50% of the music industry.
Lisa, what about those who don't identify as male or female? They don't want to be left out?
No, I think this is... I'm going to go with what we've been talking about earlier about... You said, you know, the writing was on the wall. They should have known this. We all knew this. But I think in these institutions, I think they surround themselves with people like themselves, and they all agree. You know, they go, "Oh, do you think this? Yes, I think this. Do you think this? Yeah, we all agree." And I think they don't actually think forward. They don't see what might happen. I didn't even know who Sam Smith was till yesterday. I've never heard of Sam Smith. You know, my heroes as Blondie, Susie Sue, Pauline Black from, Scar Music. Yeah. That's the strong women that I connect to. And I think and those women in the 80s were loud and proud and shouted about who they were and were angry. And it worries me that this sort of, we're all the same, aren't we? But we're not all the same.
No, we're not.
But we're sort of flattening out those differences.
And by doing that, we seem to be cancelling women.
Well, of course. I mean, again, all 3 of us have said, surely they saw this coming. But again, I think in these, and I think I agree. Let's see what the next generation says. Because I think 4 or 5 years of this, where women will get cancelled out, what's next, sports, etc. Perhaps the next generation of young women might say, hang on a minute, I'm a loud, proud, angry woman.
And let me be a woman. That's the thing. I don't know why there's this big war on women being women and allowing themselves to express themselves creatively. I think the Brits have done this to avoid controversy, but they've now landed in the exact opposite where now...
And poor old Adele, I mean, I agree with Corvair. It was great when she said, I just love being a woman, although she had to slightly row back on it the next day, didn't she? Because the woke mob were on her back.
I know, but it's like the same things they're fighting for, they're limiting other people from, women who want to be comfortable in their identity and own their identity.
Yeah. Well, it's my view that extreme gender ideology, which just says that a biological man is a woman or vice versa, is not compatible with feminism, and that's my view. But what's yours? Mark at gbnews.uk. When I get home tonight, I'll be listening to Aretha Franklin. I'll be listening to, who else? Adele, definitely. Dionne Warwick, you name it. all women and all total geniuses. Coming up in my Take at 10, you won't believe it, it's the bread wars. Waitrose versus Warburton's. Waitrose will not stock Warburton's products. I'll be picking a side at 10. You won't want to miss it. Plus, my Mark Meets guest is the genius comedy impressionist Mark Meets Steve Nallen tonight. Don't forget, Steve Nallen, of course, responsible for Margaret Thatcher's voice from Spitting Image in the 80s. But next up, is it time to stub out smoking for good? See you in 2. I'm just off for a ciggy.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there. The Brit Awards have got rid of the Best Female Singer category in the name of political correctness. A big reaction on email. Gordon says, "Hi Mark, this is not misogyny, more like stupidity. Have a non-binary category. He would win it every year. Bloke is an arse. Sam Smith, that is." Gordon not pulling his punches. On slavery, the Church of England are creating a fund to support communities impacted by crimes of the past. This from James. "Hi Mark, we didn't need slaves in the UK because we had our own slaves. We had poorhouses, we sent children up chimneys, down mines and cotton mills where their lungs bled with the cotton dust, and they grew bent over because of working such long hours on machines. What about reparations for even some recognition of UK slaves?" Also, Shamima Begum's lawyer says, "Alan, trial by jury. Tell that to the family of one of our locals who went to take aid and got beheaded. Never must be allowed back into our country." There you go. That debate will run and run. Keep those emails coming. Mark at gbnews.uk. And we posted a poll on Twitter to ask, in the big question, should we forgive terrorists or those that get involved with them? 97% said no, 3% said yes. I'll call that a landslide. Now, Labour's Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting made sparks fly this week after calling for a ban on the sale of cigarettes to ramp up the race to stub out Brits' smoking habits by 2030. Both the Tories and Labour have thrown their weight behind the target of extinguishing tobacco consumption within the decade, but with tax on cigarettes pumping billions into the exchequer every year and the already booming illicit trade, the burning question is, will it work? Well, let's speak now to the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill. Hi, Henry.
Hello.
What do you think about this? Stub out fags. After all, it's costing the NHS a fortune.
I mean, it's really not. The revenue that smokers bring in through tax, and also that they save simply through not living forever, because there's nothing more expensive than somebody who needs 20 years worth of end-of-life care, means that actually the balance of payments on smoking is if anything in the green. But ultimately, is that the basis on which we want to live our lives? The NHS was set up as a safety net, not a straitjacket. Should we be, ordering our adult lives around what best suits the NHS, or should the NHS be there to support us in making free choices?
We've seen quite full-on measures from New Zealand where young people are being banned from smoking. This raises legitimate democratic questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, there are several problems with this policy. The first is the libertarian one, I suppose you could call it, which is if you're over the age of 18 or over the age of 21 or whatever the age of adulthood is, well, why shouldn't you be allowed to make decisions? Nobody these days is starting smoking without knowing what the risks are. But there's also big practical questions. One, obviously, the loss of revenue. If you ban smoking, and smoking brings in about 10 billion a year to the UK exchequer, we're already in a cost of living crisis. We already can't afford lots of things. That's money we're going without. But also, who's getting that money? Because do you know who'll step in if we ban smoking? The black market. There's already a thriving black market in tobacco. It's competing with the legal product currently, which is taxed to high heaven and sold in ugly olive packages and all the rest of it. If you ban the sale of cigarettes, that's a huge market that's going to be handed straight to organised crime.
However, Labour clearly want to end human suffering. My first flat that I lived in with my girlfriend, now Mrs. Dolan, this was a lovely guy who worked his whole life. He was a heavy smoker. About a month after he retired, he died with lung cancer.
Yeah, and, I fully support measures to help people who want to quit. I think, a majority of smokers are trying to quit. There are smokers who don't want to quit and are taking the risks, but measures to help people quit are absolutely fine. But ultimately, the problem with this policy is it's utopian, and nobody's utopia is going to be a free society, because we all make decisions which will displease other people. So even on a principle basis, I think there are grounds for saying, actually, if I want to smoke, for example, do I not have the right to take that risk for myself? But again, if we're talking about human suffering, what is the human suffering associated with giving £10 billion a year of revenue to organised crime, which they will use for county lines, which they will use to buy weapons and support other criminal operations? So I think it's a waterbed effect. Banning smoking wouldn't stamp out smoking. It would just mean that all of those profits, those huge profits, were going to the worst people in society.
Does this proposed policy have echoes of those illiberal COVID measures?
I suppose in a sense, in that it's all about, I think COVID, a bit like the smoking ban before it, what these policies do is they just fundamentally, they changed the attitude of many people towards what was a proper limit on what the state could tell an individual to do. And obviously the exigencies of COVID have passed, and most of those measures have been taken off, the statute book. But ultimately, there's now a generation of people and of legislators who have done it before. And once you've done it before, it's much easier to think, oh, we'll do it again. That slogan you mentioned earlier about saving the NHS money, that slogan from the pandemic, protect the NHS. How many policies could you justify on that basis? Why don't you ban alcohol? Why don't you ban sugar? Obesity does cost the NHS a lot of money. So does problems connected to drinking. Once you start going down that rabbit hole, ultimately, a society that protects the NHS is a society where we're all forced to live the healthiest possible lives, even at the expense of many things that we, as free adults, greatly enjoy.
Henry, I always enjoy reading your work on Conservative Home. You are its deputy editor. Do join us again soon. My thanks to Henry Hill. Fascinating conversation. What do you think? Should we ban smoking? Or is it a human right to do bad things to your body. Mark at gbnews.uk. I suppose the danger is the slippery slope, as highlighted by Henry there, is a dictatorial, illiberal government. And let's be honest, we've had almost 3 years of that since March 2020. Coming up in the next hour, oh boy, we've saved our best till last. In my take at 10, it's the bread wars. It's Waitrose versus Warburton's. Waitrose will not stock Warburton's crumpets. And I'm picking a side. I'm not pulling my punches. That's my take at 10 in just a couple of minutes. Plus, my Mark Meets guest is a comedy superstar. It is the incredible impressionist Steve Nallen, famous, of course, for the voice of Margaret Thatcher in the 80s, but so many other political icons. Boris Johnson, Roy Hattersley, Neil Kinnock, you name it. Steve Nallen has been them. So can't wait for that. Keep those emails coming as well. Mark at gbnews.uk. And we've got the papers at exactly 10:30. You can set your watch to it. But that Take at 10 is coming next. See you shortly.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It's 10 o'clock, and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10 in just a moment, why have Waitrose stopped stocking Warburton's delicious crumpets? I'll be picking a side in the increasingly hostile bread wars. Vladimir Putin, eat your heart out. My Mark Meets guest is the hilarious Margaret Thatcher impersonator and spitting image star Steve Nallen. In the news agenda, are parents responsible for the behaviour of their grown-up children? And is it ever too late to get in shape? Plus, tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. Lots to get through, a big hour to come, including my take at 10 and the bread wars. But first, the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy has been found not guilty of raping 4 women and sexually assaulting another during parties at his Cheshire home. The France international was cleared of 6 rape charges and another of sexual assault, but the jury at Chester Crown Court were unable to reach a verdict on 1 count of rape and 1 of attempted rape after a 6-month-long trial. Mendy will be retried on those 2 charges in June. The threat of strike action in Scotland's NHS has been put on hold while negotiations take place on a new pay offer for this year. The unions say those fresh talks with the Scottish Government are expected to start next week, with any deal reached backdated to January. The Royal College of Nursing and the GMB union rejected a pay offer in November, which is worth, on average, around 7.5%. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is urging the Prime Minister to resolve the Northern Ireland Protocol dispute as a matter of urgency. Sir Keir says if Rishi Sunak makes a deal to solve problems with the post-Brexit trading arrangements, then Labour will provide the political support to get it through Parliament.
So I say to the Prime Minister, if there is a deal to do in coming weeks, do it. Whatever political cover you need, whatever mechanisms in Westminster you require, if it delivers for our national interest and the people of Northern Ireland, we will support you. The time for action on the protocol is now.
Sir Keir Starmer making a speech at Queen's University in Belfast as part of a 2-day trip to the province. Donald Trump's company's been fined £1.3 million for a number of tax crimes, including conspiracy, criminal fraud and falsifying business records. The former president did not go on trial himself and has denied any knowledge his former executives illegally evaded paying tax over a 15-year period. However, the Trump organisation was convicted for 17 counts of tax fraud last month. Rescue teams are continuing to search for survivors after a series of tornadoes swept across the southern United States, killing at least 9 people. 7 of those deaths have been reported in Alabama, which was hit by at least 5 twisters, leaving tens of thousands of people without power. Emergency officials say the death toll is expected to rise. And people across England are being warned to brace themselves for more extreme cold weather over the coming days. The Environment Agency has issued 81 flood warnings, mostly in the west and the southwest of England. From Sunday, the North, Midlands and central and eastern parts of the country are expected to be hit with cold, icy conditions and heavy snow. So if you're out and about then, look after yourself. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News, but now it is back to Mark Dolan tonight.
There you go. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. My thanks to the brilliant Aaron, who returns in an hour's time. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. My Mark Meets guest is the hilarious Margaret Thatcher impersonator and spitting image star Steve Nallen, man of 1,000 voices, a comic genius, live in the studio in a few minutes' time. In the news agenda, are parents responsible for the behaviour of their grown-up children? And is it ever too late to get in shape? Plus, tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. Tonight, I'm delighted to have alongside me journalist and the star of GB News Breakfast, Stephanie Tecci, former advisor to Boris Johnson and political commentator Kulveer Ranger, and academic and best-selling author Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. Lots to come in what's going to be a busy hour. But first, my take at 10. The popular supermarket Waitrose has declared Warburtons. The premium supermarket chain has withdrawn all products from this much-loved family-owned bakery business. Waitrose stopped selling Warburtons products a year ago, including the wildly popular Crumpet range, with concerns over quality. Waitrose have said performance did not meet expectations. However, Warburtons countered that quality is paramount and that it's put an awful lot of care into the products it bakes. Well, Waitrose customers are now horribly deprived and hungry. All they want is a Peter the Action. But sadly, Warburton's wouldn't be seen bread in one of their outlets at the moment. Now, I'm a big fan of Waitrose, a great commitment to British farming. Their essential range is well priced and very high quality, and the business itself is a shining model of retail, given, of course, that it's part of the John Lewis Partnership, which for me is one of the great institutions of this country. The employees are partners, so they have a stake in the firm. How brilliant is that? But they've got this one badly wrong. Thanks to the policy of this John Lewis company, Warburton's delicious treats are now ever knowingly undersold. Is it really about quality, or is it snobbery? Is Warburton's a Bolton-based business that's been around for 5 generations and whose current CEO bears the same surname, just too northern? Not London enough, perhaps? Not middle class enough, even? Or could it be the Warburton's family's support for Brexit is their great crime, given the fact that in many circles, Waitrose is perceived as the supermarket of the elite, of the metropolitan chattering classes who probably think Brexit was our greatest crime in this country's history? Is this sourdough or sour grapes? Well, I doubt it. From my own experience, it's clear that Waitrose care a huge amount about all of their customers across the country, but not enough to stock Warburton's wonderful range of wheat-based wonderment. I always try to use this platform to make the world and the country a better place, which is why I implore Waitrose and Warburton's, my 2 favourite W's, to get around the table and to end this strike action. I will chair the meeting if necessary, and we can even do it live on the show. I won't take sides, I never do. With Waitrose profits having fallen, they need Warburton's to make some bread. And Warburton's themselves have had a challenging time with rising inflation and therefore higher costs of ingredients, plus driver shortages. So they could do with being sandwiched in between as many supermarket shelves as possible. When it comes to this bakery bust-up, I'm confident that Waitrose can rise to the occasion. After all, they need the dough. At the very least, talk to each other. Don't loaf around. We need this resolved. Why can't they just sort this out? We've got enough trouble in the world, so it's time for a ceasefire from these 2 great brands. It's time to end the war on Warburton's. I hope I don't have to wait rows too long before that happens. After all, who doesn't love a bit of crumpet? Delicious. Crispy at the top, soggy bottom. However, the muffin's nice. Thank you to Maria, my brilliant producer, for her passable cooking skills. What do you think? Whose side do you take in the great bread war? Mark at gbnews.uk. I'll get to your emails shortly. Are you worried about the lack of Warburton's products at your local Waitrose? Let's get a reaction now whilst I continue to masticate. Journalist Stephanie Tetchy, former advisor to Boris Johnson, political commentator Corvia Ranger, and best-selling author and academic Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. Lisa, are you with Warburton's or with Waitrose?
So when you were saying crumpets, I was like, oh, are these something different? But yeah, we call them pikelets. I love Warburton's bread, I'll be honest. There's nothing better than a really thick slice of bread with loads of, as we would say, Nottinghamshire, best butter. So we'd have best butter, thick bread. Waitrose, I don't really shop in Waitrose, I'll be honest. I don't really have a local Waitrose. I think we're a bit too north for Waitrose. But in the local shops where I shop, there's always Warburton's in there. And you can also always grab a thick slice.
What do you think about Waitrose's suggestion that their performance did not meet expectations?
Is that what they're saying? I mean,
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, I was interested in your sort of link to Brexit, and I'll tell you why I'm interested in that, because I do think since Brexit there has been a lot of sort of cosmopolitan middle-class prejudices against all sorts of things, actually, in the country. So I was interested in that sort of Waitrose, Warburton war, you know, whether it's got something to do with Brexit and the prejudices that are held around the people that supported Brexit. I think it's an interesting point, actually.
Yeah, I mean, cool, Vera. I don't think Waitrose have got a problem with Brexit, which was a popular democratic vote. I don't think it's snobbery. There's some kind of misunderstanding. How do we solve it?
Well, this war of the crumpets, Mark, you know, but the quality issue is interesting. As someone who's spent most of my last 25 years in industry, this is about pounds and pence, and that's what business comes down to. And somewhere between the great commercial negotiators of Waitrose and the bread sellers of Warburton's, they haven't agreed on a price. And there's a face-off, a standoff. You know, not enough butter is being put on these crumpets, and therefore they're not happy about it. And they're stopping us eating our crumpets. But I think the key, I agree with Lisa on how it's been becomes a lightning rod for the Brexit conversation, because there is going to be these things where these peaks will emerge of Brexit and pros and against, and what metaphor can we use, and what better than a soggy bottom crumpet? But when we're in a week where the Labour Party leader is saying, you know, he's going to take back control, a bill, he's moved on from being the arch Remainer and the campaigner for Remain to saying the language of Brexit is going to become the bill for Brexit that he, the Labour Party leader, as potentially the next Prime Minister, is going to champion. You know that we're past Remain, and really we should be getting to the point where everyone can eat what they want in this post-Brexit era.
Now, listen, Stephanie, you know, Waitrose, very popular supermarket. They're all over the country. But does this reflect the north-south divide, perhaps?
I think it does a little bit, because Waitrose has always been known as the kind of rich man's supermarket in that sense. And it's such a shame that they're snubbing a heritage brand such as Warburton's. It's about supporting UK brands. They've been around for 5 generations. So obviously the quality of food is there when it comes to their ranges. I love their crumpets. And I think what they're doing now, seeing the customers' reactions to them pulling it off their market, it just goes to show that actually, you know what, Waitrose have got it wrong on this one. They really have. And the problem with this story is now it's Warburton's. What is going to be the next product that they're going to have a problem with? It just seems very unfair, and it seems very personal. I don't think it's about the quality, because the nation has spoken. We love crumpets, and we love Warburton crumpets.
Come on, Waitrose, don't keep me waiting. Let's have an end to this strike. After all, there's enough conflict in the world as it is. Let me know your thoughts on the bread wars. Mark at gbnews.uk. Lots to come. Next up, we've got the brilliant voice actor, comedian, impressionist, of course, famously the voice of Margaret Thatcher on Spitting Image in the 80s, the remarkable Steve Nallen. We've got the papers at 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. And in the news agenda, are parents responsible for the behaviour of their grown-up children? And is it ever too late to get in shape? Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Waitrose are not stocking Warburton's products, including their very popular Crumpet range. You're not happy about this? This from Bob. Waitrose will be in danger of losing customers, sales and cash flow to other outlets. How about Patricia? Why don't Waitrose customers vote with their feet and buy Warburton's crumpets from a different supermarket? Alexander, Warburton's tea cakes are scrumptious. Susan, hi Mark, I have no choice but to be on the side of Warburton's. I live in rural Wales. Waitrose do not deliver in my area. I think it's down to money. Waitrose are probably trying to screw Warburton's on price. Warburton have proven themselves. Nicely done. Warburton crumpets are the best. Thank you, Susan. Richard, I eat Warburton's crumpets every night with my supper, and occasionally I have a quick one at lunchtime, but never with a soggy bottom. Glad to hear that, Richard. Might have entered the realms of too much information there, but thank you anyway. Phil says, as an expat Lancastrian and occasional Waitrose shopper, I support Warburton's. However, this show's all about balance and all about opinions. Margie says, I have to side with Waitrose. Warburton's bread quality has deteriorated, sadly. How about this? Warburton's bread crusts taste of plastic and I find them inedible. I try to avoid their bread at all costs. That is from Martin. I could do Warburton's and Waitrose emails all night long. I think, as with all conflicts, there is blame on both sides, but I want them to get this sorted, and we're going to make that a campaign on this show to put Warburton's bread back in Waitrose. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, in which we speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sport, showbiz and beyond. Tonight, one of the most talented and hilarious voice artists of his generation, and a man who, along with a range of other impressions, epitomised Margaret Thatcher with his eerily uncanny take on the Iron Lady. Take a listen to him in action as the star of Spitting Image.
Good evening, boys. Good evening, Your Majesty.
Would you like to order, sir?
Yes, I will have a steak.
How'd you like it?
Oh, raw, please.
And what about the vegetables?
Oh, they'll have the same as me.
Norman, speak up, man, for God's sake. Say what you mean. You're not on the platform now. Nigel pinched my pen.
Nigel,
He did.
is this true? You know my policy on stealing from one's friends? Cabinet, what do we call it when people go around stealing other people's property? You!
A free market economy?
Rubbish! What do we call it, David?
Socialism.
Well done, David.
Comedy gold! I'm privileged to say that Steve Nallen is with us in the studio and rightly chuckling along to that.
Well, there's some good gags there, weren't there? Some nice lines. I enjoyed that.
The writing, the puppets and the voices. Do you think that that was a golden era of comedy when nobody was offended by anything?
I think that's a fair point, but I think that the team that we had was Chris Barry, there was Harry Enfield, the late John Sessions. Yeah. We just had such a great team. And what I remember most about working on Spitting Image was how democratic it was, because I was also doing the puppeteering and Chris Barry was doing puppeteering as well. And we used to make suggestions to our producer, John Lloyd. Yeah. It was very, very free. So we had a great American guy called Anthony Asbury, who was the puppeteer, great puppeteer, and he did the Thatcher puppet. And he was the person who said, put her in a man's suit.
Brilliant.
You know...
with a cigar and all the rest of it.
Absolutely. And actually, he brought his own dog in, which looked like the sort of Churchill dog, and called Precious, to be the dog alongside her. So, and people forget, really, that the original voice I did for Mrs. Thatcher wasn't actually all that good. It got better when I added caricature to it. So in the very early days, she had that very high voice, and it was a relatively accurate impression. I'm not putting myself down for that. But what I would say is that Peter Flock came up to me and said, look, you've got to match... One of the puppeteers? One of the creators. He said, you've got to match the voice to the puppet. And I said, well, the only way I can do that is to borrow her voice from the House of Commons. And the House of Commons voice, obviously, is bigger, so I added the power of that. The right honourable gentleman does not understand the nature of fiscal policy. He does not understand the nature of... And that's why I combined the very softness. And Douglas, why are you being so ridiculous? Mrs. Thatcher didn't sound like that. But that didn't matter. The point was that the puppet sounded like that. And it was right for the puppet, it was right for Britain, and it was right for everyone. And we had a marvellous time.
Normally, satirical comedy makes politicians look bad, but some think that you enabled Margaret Thatcher, that you actually, in many ways, were an asset because she was characterised as strong and divisive. That's what he said. Strong and decisive.
Well, I think that's another fair point. We had loads of sketches where she was invincible. And who's going to... I mean, I also did Roy Hattersley, and Roy Hattersley was a bumbling idiot. And I met Roy a few times, and he said to me, I'm very grateful that you are portraying me as a bumbling idiot, because it could have been a great deal worse. And he mentioned the snail, which... one of the cabinet ministers, Mrs. Thatcher, was...
Kenneth Baker.
Kenneth Baker, thank you. You're better memory than me on that.
Love the show.
And so on. So yes, it was a fun show.
But you weren't cheerleaders for the Thatcher regime. It's just that, you know, comedians... Well, comedians are there to sort of characterise politicians in a comedic way, and that this was your take on Thatcher and the puppet designers. They just identified that this was essentially a very masculine female prime minister.
Yeah, I think what John Lloyd, our producer, who was comic genius,
legend behind not the 9 o'clock news,
Night News, Blackadder.
QI.
I mean, he's QI, absolutely genius, the greatest mind in comedy I've ever worked with. He didn't like the word satire. And he characterised the show as it's Sunday night, 10 o'clock, might have been in the pub, you've got a hard work tomorrow. Basically, Spitting Image is to the rich and famous. Yeah. And that's what it was. Thinking about it now, I think the thing that Spitting Image achieved, if achieved is the right word, it helped destroy deference. And we had deference toward politicians. We had certainly deference toward the royal family. And Spitting Image was part of that process, which certainly began with TW3. That was the week that was in the 1960s. But TW3 didn't do it about the royal family. And there was all sorts of controversy, for example, about the Queen Mother, which I ended up doing.
You were the Queen Mother, of course.
Well, I suggested to John Lloyd, I said, why don't we use the voice of Beryl Reid as the Queen Mother. Not just her voice, but Maureen, which was this character she did that was from the Black Country. And I said, well, the same age, and you know, it would make her funny. And we don't know how the Queen Mother speaks and so on. But there was a huge controversy over she was the person you couldn't touch. Yeah. In that world, and also now the boys, of course, have grown up, and you couldn't possibly do the kids either. Yeah. So Spitting Image did, you know, and it was.
And astonishing that you were playing all these female characters, because you were the right voice, but it's counterintuitive, isn't it?
Well, I've got a higher pitched voice, and I was brought up by my grandmother, and I sort of realised over the years that that indomitable women are people I'm attracted to. I know you've had her on your show many times, but Anne Widdecombe is one of the most interesting voices to have, and she's sort of like Goggles, and it's a very strange voice. And I met her once, and she's a very sweet lady in a way, and I said, Anne, do you realise that you've got two notes operating at the same time? And she said, oh, yes, I have. And I said, the only other character that I do that has that a particular way of speaking is Homer Simpson. Homer Simpson has a high voice and a low voice at the same time. And she had no idea who Homer Simpson was, bless her. Maybe she thought I was talking about, you know, the Odyssey and the Iliad.
Well, I love Anne Widdecombe. I'm a huge admirer of hers. She's a really, really decent
lady. I tell it as it is. I tell it as it is, and nobody argues with me.
No one, and I never dare argue. She is a fixture on our show every Sunday night in the Big Question, and she's back on Sunday at 9:20. But I like Anne, and do you have to have a certain affection for the characters that you play? Do you have to slightly like them?
I think you've got to have some sort of connection, and with me, it was because I was brought up by a very strong northern grandmother, for all sorts of family reasons, and therefore I think I am.
Dame Maggie Smith, a very different sort of character. You know, playing the Dowager Duchess of Downton, but nevertheless indomitable. Stop fiddling there. You're fiddling.
I'm fiddling with my paperclip. I've been told off by the Duchess. Can I ask you, I mean, you're so up to date with your voices. Do you get the opportunities you deserve?
No, I stopped doing live comedy a couple of years ago. I really enjoyed it, but actually, what I found was there was one politician I tried to impersonate, and that was and I actually did it for a Spitting Image puppet, which was David Cameron. And what was interesting about David Cameron was he had that he had that sort of catch in his voice, like he's just had a cold. He had an odd way of saying clear, which is not quite posh but not estuary. And at the beginning of sentences, he often used to breathe after the first two words and sort of take in a little breath. So I put all that together, and I had a go, and you know, that breathing that he had, and the clear, and the way he said, let me make this absolutely clear. But I never captured his essence. That was the problem. I technically got it close-ish, but sometimes with an impression, you can capture the essence or you can't, and I don't know why that works.
Well,
it doesn't.
It was uncanny from where I was sitting. I consider you a genius, Steve Nallen. A thrill to have you in the studio. Have you got a book out?
I've got a book out.
Right. Well, listen, no, we're here to do business. Let's get a nice shot of that, Chloe. The book is called The Time That Never Was, a rambunctious riot of a book. Give me your elevator pitch on this one. Give me a two-sentence sell.
It's actually partly about my relationship with my grandmother in a fantasy fiction time travel form.
Well, look, I think we can all agree how hilarious Steve Nallen is, which is why you need to buy a copy of his book. We could all do with a smile in January. The Time That Never Was by Steve Nallen is out now, and I'm sure Steve will come back to the studio very soon. Lots more to come after this, the papers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My thanks again to Steve Nallen, comedian and impressionist. His new book, The Time That Never Was, is out now. And it's time for a look at tomorrow's papers, hot off the press. And we start with The Times. And they lead with, "We need to train more doctors," says NHS chief. The Guardian, HRT may cut risk of dementia in women. The Daily Express, HRT drugs may help fight to halt dementia. HRT drugs taken by millions of women could help prevent dementia. Developing detail in that story, as referenced in The Guardian, but also the front page story of The Express. The Independent, loose cannon Boris told stay out of Ukraine. Senior military figures have criticised Boris Johnson and accused him of looking for publicity in a war zone after it was revealed that he plans to visit Ukraine. The former head of the army, Lord Dannett, also warned that the ex-Prime Minister was a loose cannon whose plan could upstage Rishi Sunak. Mr Johnson intends to travel to Kyiv in the coming months to show his support for the war-torn country. He built a strong relationship with Volodymyr Zelensky whilst he was in office and has urged the West to continue to support Ukraine against its Russian invaders. I'll be asking his former top advisor, Kulveer Ranger, what he thinks of that story shortly. He's on my panel. But the Daily Mail next. Killed by the dogs she was paid to walk. A woman was savaged to death by a pack of 7 dogs that she was walking at a popular beauty spot. The 28-year-old victim screamed at horrified passers-by to go back as she tried to get up from the ground and fend off the frenzied animals. One witness described the chaos as like 7 small wolves attacking you. The horror began when one of the woman's dogs bit a stranger. It then turned on her when she tried to intervene and the others joined in. A truly horrific story. Spare us, Harry. I've got enough for a second book. Please no. The Daily Mirror now. Tragedy of Elvis's only child. Lisa Marie died of a broken heart. Lisa Marie Presley was still grieving her son when she died suddenly, aged 54. Elvis's only child had never recovered from Benjamin's suicide in 2020 at the age of 27. An insider said it broke her soul and it broke her heart. The Sun, exclusive, marriage number 2 over. Noel divorce. Oh, dear. Noel Gallagher, of course, one half of Oasis, has split from his wife, Sarah, after 22 years and has moved out of their mansion. Very sad news, because that was a well-reported showbiz marriage that was going very well. So we were told. I'll ask Stephanie about that shortly. The Daily Telegraph, there's enough for another book. I cut memoir in half to spare my family. Well, you didn't spare them very much, did you, Harry? Also, buyers grumble as Tesla cuts car prices. And how about this? Mermaids to train child gender trust. An NHS trust taking over care of trans children from the Tavistock Clinic is being trained by the controversial charity Mermaids. The Eye Weekend, Labour, NHS too often run for doctors, not patients. And the Daily Star, last tragic days of the King's daughter, the curse of Elvis. Lisa Marie had turned into a recluse, reflecting there on the sad death of Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's daughter. And those are your front pages. Let's get reaction now from Stephanie Tecci, Kulveer Ranger and Lisa Mackenzie, my fantastic panel tonight. And let's have a look at that story in both The Guardian and The Express. Lisa, HRT drugs may help fight to halt dementia.
I think this is a really important story, actually. We were talking earlier about the word woman and why women and the word woman and everything about women should not be erased. And this is one of the reasons, because, you know, it's 2023 and we're only just starting to understand and even think about what menopause does to women's bodies, women's lives.
Yes.
You know, we've had a silence for hundreds of years over this and now we can talk about it. So I think, you know, one of the things that we have to recognise is there is a difference between men and women, and women go through the menopause and it affects all different parts of their life and their health. So I think this is a really important story, but it's bigger than just the HRT and the dementia. It should really be warning us about what happens if we don't talk about the differences between the biological differences between men and women.
You're absolutely right to point that out. And Kulveer, dementia is a ticking time bomb for both genders, and it's a massive headache for our society going forward.
It is, and we all know that there's the problem of adult social care. I think not one of us will now not have experienced having grandparents, parents, friends who are suffering from this, or have had to manage, and the pressure that this puts on families, individuals, lifestyle changes, everything associated with it. But as a society, we are not structured to manage this issue. But we need to talk about it more. We obviously, as Lisa's saying, need to look at it from the prism of how it affects the two genders and what could be looked at in terms of more research. But the big problem is how we're going to resolve the model of adult social care.
Yeah.
There is a funding issue, there's a societal issue, there's a structural issue, and that it's a cross-political issue. It's you know, we've had many prime ministers try to grab the nettle here, but something's come along and you know, distracted them. We have to focus in on this issue.
Do you think that a cross-party approach is more possible going forward, whether it's the NHS, whether it's important infrastructure like roads and rail, whether it's social care? Do you think that Labour and the Tories and Lib Dems, can they come together in the national interest? Will that ever happen?
I hope so. I'm a positive and optimist. And what I do is I look at actually, there's two stories. You've got the Times and the Eye today, well, tomorrow. And they're both talking about the NHS. And the Times is saying we need more doctors, OK? Yes, of course we need more doctors. We've got a problem. We haven't got enough doctors. Yes, we need more doctors. But the Eye is the interesting one. And I'm really intrigued by this headline. Labour, NHS too often run for doctors, not patients. Now, the NHS is a sacred cow. It becomes a political football between, especially the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. And for now, best part of a decade, it's been which party can throw more money at this issue. But here we go with Labour actually saying we need to look at fundamental reform. And I think this story talks about 10 years to potentially really reform the NHS. You and I and nearly everyone will agree that the service that the medical people deliver in the NHS is unbelievable. It's not world-class. It's unbelievable. But the administration, the structure, the way this organisation is set up, and the cost, it's not equating, and it's not sustainable. So, yes, in the national interest of not just everyone right now, but the future of the health of this country, the political parties should come together. Hopefully they will come together, and it's great to see Labour looking at it.
Lisa's shaking her head. She thinks it's not going to happen.
There's too many egos involved, sorry.
That's what it is.
I mean, they will always come together when there's not an election looming. When the election starts looming and there's votes up, this is when...
Wouldn't it be great if they could make a plan for energy, for housing, for the NHS, social care?
But how many years has people said this? For years, for generations, people have said, wouldn't it be wonderful if our politics and our business and the charities and all the institutions come together and we sort our society out? But that's not what happens, is it?
It's not. But the reason I've got a glimmer of hope here is because up until this point, it's always been about money. One side saying, we got more money, no, we need more money. And they're moving the debate on where it's actually about reform. Now, the Conservatives find it hard to own that conversation because people go, they're not fond of the NHS, they want to privatise it. But if the Labour Party can start talking the language of reform of the NHS, there's a glimmer of hope.
Well, yes, definitely. That's the headline. And Kulvir's right. Labour, NHS too often run for doctors, not patients. That's surprising there. Labour effectively slaughtering the sacred cow.
I know. And it's, you know, it's one of those things with Labour, like they have to now that the Conservatives have had so many down moments over the past few years, I think Labour really needs to set their agenda when it comes to the NHS and how they really feel about it.
Yeah.
And I think so many people can agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of those things with the NHS, it's been failing for a very long time. And we just need people to be honest about that.
Yeah. Can I ask you about Boris Johnson in Ukraine? He's going to make a trip to Ukraine. He's something of a rock star out there. He was very supportive of Ukraine when he was Prime Minister. Many would argue that the vaccine rollout, getting Brexit done, the election victory of 2019 and Ukraine, those were his great achievements.
Yeah, and I think Boris Johnson needs to capitalise on that because he's in a bit of a politically no man's land at the moment. He's no longer Prime Minister. He's barely holding on to his seat for his constituency. So I think if this is going to be Boris's success with Ukraine, then let him go ahead and do it because I don't feel like, even though Rishi has a good relationship with Zelensky, I think Boris was the one that was making all these plans. So he wasn't expected to be ousted out as Prime Minister, so give him his one last chance to make a success of something.
Do you not think it's unfair on Rishi Sunak? It overshadows Sunak, and the only reason Boris is so popular in Ukraine is because he gave them billions.
Well, I think Rishi undermined Boris and took his premiership away from him, so I think Rishi will actually be like, you know what, take this as a consolidation prize.
Look, Stephanie, if only there was someone here who knew Boris intimately. Oh, wait a minute.
Lisa's here.
Kulvir, you were a former top advisor to Boris Johnson. What do you think about his victory lap in Ukraine?
Look, it's a serious point here because what Boris did do as Prime Minister was corral the international community at a time when it needed to be corralled and focus in on the issue that Putin was about to ride roughshod into Ukraine and they needed to front up. It wasn't just about what the UK could do, and he did that. And that is why it will be a significant part of his political legacy. But, you know, as we know, Boris is not done. And I think Rishi has a lot on his agenda in this coming year. There's potentially an election looming very early in 2024. We've talked about the NHS, adult social care, cost of living crisis, energy, etc. He has a very full in tray. Does he have the time to really be spending on the international stage dealing with Ukraine? It's something that David Cameron said about Boris Johnson. When you've got your best players, put them on the pitch and use them. And I think in this instance, Rishi Sunak will probably do well to heed that advice and use Boris Johnson.
Didn't David Cameron also say, what do you do with a problem like Boris? He did say that as well, didn't he?
I think David Cameron said probably a lot of things about Boris, and Boris probably said a lot of things about...
Can I play a very quick game of Boris Bingo with you now that you're here, because you know him well? Do you think he'll be parachuted into a safer seat before the election?
No, I think he'll be up for the fight. I think he's always he's an electoral asset, and he electrifies people.
And if things go badly in May, will he run again and seek to fight the next election as leader?
No, I think the Conservative Party has to accept there will be some damage in the local elections. That happens when you're the party of government and they're not exactly popular in the polls.
Do you think Boris, if he were to come back, he's playing the long game and it would be after the next election?
No, I think Boris is looking to support the Conservative Party stay in power. That is what Boris is trying to do.
Ever the spokesman. Ever the spokesman, Stephanie. Listen, we've got lots more to come. Very excited about more stories from the papers, including are parents responsible for the behaviour of their grown-up children? Is it ever too late to get in shape? And I'll be asking Stephanie about that very sad story that the Oasis singer Noel Gallagher has split up with his partner of 22 years. That's a big showbiz story. We'll get more on that next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Let's get more reaction to the papers with journalist Stephanie Tetchy, political commentator, Corvair Ranger and best-selling author and academic Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. And Stephanie, I'd love to talk to you about Noel Gallagher, who has split from his wife Sarah after 22 years. And it seems like she was the love of his life. I mean, she could do no wrong.
No, she can't. And to be honest, they were one of the most solid marriages in showbiz. Mark, to get to 22 years in the entertainment industry together, that is an achievement, because in showbiz, celebrity marriages, give it 5 years, it's over. And she's very much been a rock in his career. You know, they've always had a united front. He's always spoken about her as the love of his life. But behind closed doors, Mark, sometimes you see a pretty picture of a couple and you think, think they're the happiest couple on earth, but behind closed doors, it's a different story. And I imagine in time, more will come out to do with the divorce. Hopefully there's no one else involved, but you never know. And also what I find is with these partners of people who are in the limelight, they often feel neglected. You know, you have someone like Noel Gallagher who's always going to be on the road, touring. He's probably surrounded by a lot of women and all that stuff. And sometimes...
I get that here at GB News.
I can imagine, Mark. You're hot stuff.
Gloria De Piero, Camilla Tominey, Stephanie Tetchy, Lisa McKenzie.
I'm so team Mark.
Well, I'm very honoured to hear that. And I just got a question for you, Stephanie. He's 55 years of age.
Yeah.
Midlife crisis?
I think it is a midlife crisis, and probably there is going to be a younger lover that's going to come out of the shadows anytime soon. But again, it is a shame when a marriage breaks down and there's kids involved, and when it's so publicly on the front of the Sun, you can't really get away from it. And a lot of the paps and a lot of the industry are now going to be primed for more information about this break.
Now, listen, Lisa, you've got a bid in, aren't you? You're going to be on Tinder now.
Well, for all we know, she might have dumped him. I mean, he's a miserable, grumpy old man. So, you know, it may be that she's looking for the younger model. I mean, you know, I'm single. I'm 54.
Listen, you know what? He'd be very lucky. In his dreams, Lisa, he wrote Wonderwall about Meg Matthews, his previous wife. Do you think maybe she's dumped him because he didn't write any songs about her?
Or successful songs, because those songs, when he wrote those albums, and, you know, I was living that in my teenage years, those songs are just so totemic and so renowned, and they're not about her.
Too right.
You know, so, yeah.
Well, more than likely, he'll have new music coming out, and probably this will be the inspiration for it.
Indeed.
He'll do an Adele.
Well, look, let's be clear. It's a really sad story, and we wish both of them well. He's an absolute music genius, and she's a very accomplished and beautiful woman as well. So it's a sad story, and we wish them all the best for the future. A 70-year-old Canadian influencer, Joan McDonald, is defying odds with her fitness journey online. She's lost 6 stone in 6 years, transforming her life with good nutrition, strength training, and a positive mental attitude. She shares her motivational tips with almost 2 million Instagram followers, and is releasing her first book, Flex Your Age and Fitness, app this month. So it begs the question, is it ever too late to get in shape?
Never.
Never. No, I would say not.
If you're in it for the long haul, you want to maintain your body. There used to be this old narrative of once you hit 40, it all goes downhill. And actually, no, that's when you actually could be at your peak and you can maintain your fitness and your body. And that's why I love these silver influencers, because they make you feel positive about aging. There's always been this narrative of getting older is such a bore. No, embrace it. Wear that bikini at 70 if you've got the body. If you've worked hard for it, flaunt it at any age.
Well, there you go. Well, look, I've personally seen Cuvier's guns, and they are something to behold. Very briefly, every week, Guardian columnist Annalisa Barbieri addresses a personal problem sent in by a reader. This week, she was asked whether a reader should confront her parents for failing to guide her through education. So, are parents responsible for the behaviour of their grown-up children? You're an academic. Tell us about this.
Do you know what? I think it's this thing you were just talking about, the silver influencers. Children are staying children much longer than they used to.
Yeah.
You know, at one point, you know, that transition between youth and adulthood was perhaps, 2 years between 16 and 18, and you got married and had kids, whatever, and you moved on. I mean, childhood now is up to 30 years old.
Yeah.
So I think parents are thinking they are responsible for their adult children well beyond the age of, what we perhaps thought of adulthood.
What happens if your 23-year-old daughter becomes a mass murderer? I mean, it's not your fault, is it, Stephanie?
I don't know, it might be.
I was thinking that earlier. I was just thinking, up to a certain age, even though I do believe we are products of our environments, i.e. the family home, once you get that free will when you become an independent adult, that's up to
18 is the cut-off, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the route you've decided.
I think there's that immortal line from Philip Larkin, isn't there? That they your mum and dad. But there is a certain truth in that. But at the end of the day, we want to generate and nurture and grow young adults that will take responsibility.
Yes.
Not at the age of 30 be looking to blame their parents for whatever they have.
I've actually got one of those.
I heard a Hugh Jackman interview, name drop, but I just heard it on TV where he talked about the anxiety that every parent retains about are you doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Well,
and we are always trying to do the right
thing. Let me tell you, the parents of my panel did a great job. Thank you for your brilliant company tonight. And most importantly, you at home. I've loved every minute. And we're back tomorrow from 8 till 11. It is Mark Dolan tonight on a Saturday. And the People's Hour at 8. Headliners is next.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll start this weekend mild and wet, but we'll end it with the likelihood of frost and ice and the possibility of a bit of snow to boot. At the moment, low pressure systems and weather fronts are coming in from the southwest, bringing the wet weather and also the reasonably mild conditions. It's a bit chilly out there right now, but as the rain pushes in from the west, temperatures will actually rise through the night. But the rain could cause some further issues. There are flood warnings in place from the Environment Agency, and we have a Met Office yellow warning in place for that rain across Western England and Wales. As I said, temperatures actually rising through the night, so we start the weekend in the south in double digits. We also start with quite a bit of rain, and it'll be blustery as well. The wind's picking up through the night. A wet and windy Saturday morning for many. Turning brighter quite quickly in Northern Ireland, but more showers coming in here and into Western Scotland, where there'll be some snow on the hills. But brightening up for most of England and Wales during the day. So some afternoon sunshine. It'll also turn colder through the day, so temperature actually dropping through the afternoon and generally 5 to 7 Celsius for most. Temperature dropping further on Saturday night. The wind's whipping up across Northern Ireland. More rain to come here, so we have another Met Office yellow warning in place across Northern Ireland for Saturday night. The wind strengthening further north as well, and we'll see a bit more in the way of snow coming down to low levels across northern Scotland by Sunday morning. Overall, Sunday's a drier and a brighter day, certainly for much of eastern England. There will be showers further west, snow across the mountains of North Wales and a little bit in the hills across Northern Ireland too. But I say generally a lot drier and brighter for most on Sunday, but also colder. Temperatures struggling to get much of a 4 to 8 Celsius along the south coast. The wind's picking up in the far southwest and the potential for a bit more wet weather on Sunday night into Monday morning. And as it turns colder, that does bring the risk of some snow. Keep up to date with the Met Office weather warnings this weekend.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's